Hi my friend, in this video we're going to be making modern classic house bass, synths, and vocals inspired by Harry Romero's song, Revolution. And we're going to find out if we can do this in under 3 hours by using the 80-20 rule of house music production. What you're listening to right now is a song that we'll be working on. And what you're looking at right now is the Ableton project file that we'll be working on. We're going to go in order of how I built out all the melodic content. So starting with the bass, layer by layer, then getting into the melodic stuff with the main focus being the vocals, and then reinforcing it with some synths that actually weren't in the original tune. Make sure you stick around to the end of the video because we'll be doing a recap of the 80-20 rule here, so you can apply what you learned in this video to your own music, because all in all, it only took me about 3, maybe 4 hours to recreate all the melodic content that you're hearing here. And this entire song, if you pull it back, fully arranged, mixed, mastered, and ready to go, whether it's in DJ sets or being sent out to labels, only took about 5 or 6 hours for me to complete. So if you want to finish songs faster too, I made you a free bundle of templates, samples, and special bonuses that I use to completely finish one song like this every single week. Visit the link that's on screen now or in the description to grab the ultimate song finishing toolkit for free. And if you want to take your music to the next level, you can also find a link to this video's project files that you can completely go through at your own pace in the description as well. With that said, let's jump into this. Alright. So when it comes to the bass and synth and vocals for this one, things I want to first mention right off the bat is I usually go through the drums first and add in the track here and add in an arrangement track so that I have these little dummy clips knowing where each section of the song is. So as I'm building things out myself, I can flick back and forth between the reference and kind of build out the song as I'm hearing all the different elements added. For me, always the first thing is the drum loop. So make sure you've seen that portion of this guide so far. It sounds like this. Pretty sweet. And the idea that I usually go about is like, first I'll find like the intro section, build the drums to that, either intro or outro where there's like just drums. Then I'll move that over to a section where there's just the bass. And so right now that would be this section here, the sub intro. So if we have a listen to just the reference track. Right? And then we have a listen to what we created here. Actually, listen. Turn off this. Cool. So usually once I have the drums done, the next thing I like to add in is the bass. So I think I have something special over here. Have a look. I did it. It might be that. Cool. So this is a closer look at what the bass pattern is here. Let me just zoom in so you can have a look at it. It's just like do 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 do. And so the way that I found the pattern for this bass sound is what I did was I just found an area of the tune, I believe here. Zoom in here. Where the bass is playing, and what you can do is just Command E, find a little slice of it, and then you're going to want to press Command J to consolidate it. And then over on like if you grab yourself a MIDI clip, so Command Shift T will create a MIDI clip, and then if you just drag that portion where it's just like the drums and the bass playing onto the MIDI clip and press Melody, Ableton will actually kind of give you a really good starting point. So if you saw what we had, it was like do 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 do. So it's like very similar. So that's a nice little trick that you can use to get like the bass pattern real quick. And then what I did after that was a little bit different than normal. So what I've been doing is working through getting the drums, then getting the bass kind of pattern more or less correct. Because what I have here is this bass group that it's like a template that I always have in here. The first track is a sub, and then the next one is mid bass layers that I can add in. So these are these are 2 different mid bass layers. So that way, once I get the pattern done, like the bass is sounding pretty tight. And then what I'll do is figure out, so we got the drums, we got the bass. The next thing I like to do is figure out the main melodic element. So this could be like, say, finding like a hook, like a remix that you want to build against, or if there's like a particular hook that you want to create first. Finding that's really important, I'm finding, because Sure, you can kind of build out against a reference by going drums and then bass and then like chords and then the hook. But I'm finding if you can figure out what your hook is earlier on, you can add the hook in at this point and then adjust the notes and the sound a bit of the bass to match your hook, so everything's sounding cohesive and working with the main element that you want to have. So here's what I mean by that. So I'm going to go over into the melodic section and I'm going to show you the hook that I have. So let's go over, I think it plays pretty well here. And this is again why it's nice to have this arrangement thing at the top so I can see the sections of the song. So let's go ahead and play over here. So you can hear this, it's this little like love sick kind of vocal. This is actually like a vocal from one of my old songs when I was making more like chill stuff, and I couldn't find the original track, so I actually just like split out the vocal as well. So I can't really show you like some of the stuff. It's just a bit that I found from Splice, and I was using the auto filter and turning on the LFO of the auto filter so that it kind of gives this cool like filtery, warbly kind of sound throughout the track. So I think it's super cool. This is what I was trying to do to kind of emulate if we listen to the reference track at this point here. The ooh, oh, ah, e kind of thing. So trying to find a vocal, that's pretty important. If you listen to the reference track, the Romero track is basically drums, bass, vocals, and a bit of like sound effects. So that's why I found it very important to get that hook early on when kind of creating something like this. Went for a vocal that was kind of similar. Not as iconic, of course, but like something similar, and then something that I could actually release later. So the main thing once adding that in is usually I actually build out like a loop like this. So the idea is to build out the song vertically and then stretch out that loop horizontally by using like this reference track up here. So let's kind of go through that process in how I kind of built it out. So the first thing was this vocal here. Let me turn everything else off. This is what we have. And the main thing really is flipping back and forth between this and the reference to get the volumes as close as you can. The volumes is going to be that 80-20 rule there that's going to really get you there. Because other than that, we do have some processing going on here. So I'm using this plugin called Gullfoss to kind of like fix some of like the crappy sound that I found in the vocal. It kind of like is an auto EQ kind of thing. It's just like a magic plugin. Kind of cool. Then removing a bunch of lows, adding in a bunch of highs because I was mixing it like kind of like subtle and chill in the old track. So I had to try to like bring that back. And then I also added in this Relife thing, which is a free plugin from Analog Obsession. Trying to add in more of that high end there. Then what we're doing is running it into a one-knob sidechain. So I have this like shaper device, going to quarter notes, ducking the volume. That way I don't have to play with like stupid like compressors and stuff like that to get sidechain. I can just quickly finish songs faster because I have all these quick little templates and like macro knobs and all this kind of stuff. A little bit of saturation to fill it sound a little bit, and a bit of this one knob polyver wider plugin, which is also free. Just mapped some of the core knobs to an Ableton rack so I can quickly add in the width and move on without having to open up the plugin each time and all that kind of stuff. And then this is something new that I've been using. This is super cool. Phil Spicer's the compressor, which I felt like as I'm trying to get into this like sound, like the Harry Romero sound there, where it's just like drums and bass and vocals and really not too many other elements. I feel like I needed to start learning compression more so that I can have it so that each element is loud and full and takes up a lot of like the frequency spectrum and the sound of each track, because there's not a lot of elements. Each element needs to be like not a lot of dynamic range, and you can hear each little bit of it, and it's nice and full. So one cool thing about this plugin, I won't go too crazy into it because I was mostly using kind of like the machine learning feature, is if you press this magic thing, there's like a little thing you can do here where you can set what type of signal it is, what kind of compression style, and then it'll like listen to the track and then set all the knobs for you, which I think is super cool. I like working this way. I do kind of understand compression, but each time I've tried to dial it in myself, it's not sounded as good. So finding a plugin like this, though, it was actually free, really helped kind of make it so that I'm reducing the dynamic range of that vocal. So like it was very jumpy because it's all filtering down and up and all the time. So this was a way to make it more consistent so I could bring up the volume of it and it's like filling up the sound nicely. Then I'm just running into this K clip. This is the paid version, but you can get the free version as well. Trying to get about like a decibel clipped here, which is again just clipping some of the top end, reducing the dynamic range so you can bring up the volume of it. And then I have some effects and return stuff going on here too. So I'm going to quickly show you that. On my reverb, I have the Valhalla Vintage Reverb. Main trick here that you should pay attention to is what I'll try to do is you can go and find a key BPM calculator, type in the BPM, and it'll tell you what milliseconds you should use in your decay on your reverb so that your decay is fading out at a musical element. So I believe this might be half notes or quarter notes. I can't remember. But this way you can dial in more reverb since it's fading out before the next hit comes. And that way you can increase more of it. It's not like overlapping and washing out the sound. So super cool little tip there. Dial in some reverb on the vocal. Then what I like to have is a short delay. So I'm just using the echo on eighth notes right here with a little bit of offset. And then I like to also have a long delay. This is on quarter notes with a little bit of offset. And then, yeah, that's kind of giving it like a little bit more spacious sound, a little bit fuller sound, a little bit more high end on there. So once I had that vocal in, the next thing was to actually go back to the bass. So if we listen to the bass here. So what I did was, I believe I changed the key of it and then added it. So it's like, instead of do, 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 it's like do, 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 and then like a little trick here. Just trying to change up the sound a little bit. Because what happens throughout this track is I've labeled the colors here a little bit differently. As the song progresses, it starts adding in additional notes, and then it gets to a certain point here where I actually changed it quite a lot from the original track or the reference track to give it more of a progression. So this is what it sounds like. Or actually, let's show you from here. It gets a lot more. Yeah, the chord change. Cool. So that's kind of a look at that. In terms of the sound design, let's go over that real quick. So what I have is usually I like to have the bass cut up in a couple different ways. Is basically it's a sub track and a mid bass track. So the sub is this B sub that I've built out. It's really just an operator running on a sine wave. A sine wave is the most simplest form of like sub sound that you can have. So I like to have that. And then there's a bunch of different ways to add in some saturation to kind of make it punch through a little bit more on like laptop speakers and also give it a bit more of a grit and character. And then what I'm doing here is I have that same side chain on here built right in. And then also a high shelf filter so I can roll off a bunch of the highs. So it's really just trying to be just the sub. So if we listen to this by itself, or listen to where it's playing, just like low, sine wave, boom. And then the idea is to layer in additional sound. So you guys just have one mid bass layer, but I did something a little bit different here that I'm going to show you. So first trick here is when working with the subs and the mid bass layer is if you change the from all ins to your sub layer, it'll feed all this MIDI information directly into this track. So you don't have to get copy and pasted. As you can see, as I was building it out, I was creating different variations of the clips, and it would have been super annoying to have to like copy and paste it down multiple layers. This way it's just automatically happening. So let's have a look at this mid bass layer. One of the things you're going to want to notice right away is that I add this pitch device. This is the Ableton pitch device onto these mid bass layers, because this way I'm able to, with one click, increase or decrease the octave of it. In the case that what sounds good on the sub bass layer doesn't sound good on the mid bass layer, I can just move the octave up without having to like copy over the clip and control shift it up or anything. You just do it all here. So let's have a listen to this. So that without it, this is just the sub. And then with this mid bass layer, let's just listen to the mid bass layer. Sounds freaking sick. So basically what I did is I found this like bass guitar one shot on splice. I dropped it in to a simpler, converted it to a sampler, because as you can see here, it's starting in the key of E, in which case you're going to want to change it to a sampler so you can change the root so that the root is also E, and then it's going to behave like a normal keyboard, or else everything would be shifted up and be funky. So just a little tip there. And then when you're working with mid-bass layers like this, what you're going to want to do is remove a bunch of the low end. So we're moving under 126 hertz. That way that sub sound is mostly taking care of that low end. And this way we can do as much processing as we want to the mid-bass layer without worrying about messing up that nice, pure, subby low end. Then what we're doing is with a little one knob sidechain again, and a little bit of saturation to make it sound grittier and almost distorted. And then a little bit of this one knob polyverse plugin that I'm not sure if I mentioned in this video yet, but it's a free plugin. It kind of helps with stereo sound, pushing things left to the right. And I've just mapped the core knob to an Ableton rack so I can move really quickly and do the processing fast, so I can create a layer, make the layer sound good, mix as you go, move on to the next one, finish songs quickly. And then what I did, which is a little bit unusual for me at least, is so we have the sub and mid bass. And then I also added in this like high mid bass. So let's solo that. So for this, what I did is I pitched it up 2 octaves from the sub, the same bass guitar sound that I had in that mid bass layer. Main difference is if we go back to this mid bass layer, I've removed a bunch of the highs here, so it's really just like the low mids. And then I added in this one here, just removing some of the lows and letting like the mids fly out. Similar processing, some sidechain, some saturation. But for me, when I was listening to the reference track, I could hear, I don't know, a lot of the bass coming out a little bit more, but I also like the fullness of that mid bass layer. So all together we get something that sounds like this. And then the reference. So not perfect, similar, but not perfect. And then other than that, something new that I've been doing is I added in that compressor again to the bass group layer to kind of glue everything together and reduce the dynamic range of the bass, so that way I can turn it up and it sounds more full. I think it's very important as building up tracks that have less elements in it to make sure each one's like compressed nicely and has a dynamic range produced, exactly the same reasons that I've been mentioning before. So again, I just use that magic thing, set it to bass, let it run a little bit, and then kind of just adjust it very slightly. I think I use the peak catcher thing. Helps remove, it has a separate compressor that helps remove just some of the peaks and acts separately on just the peaks. That's kind of useful for just really making things nice and full and compressed without sounding like crap, because that's usually what happened when I would do it before. So that's a cool one. And then just some clipping to get rid of, I put a decibel clip off the tops, again to reduce the dynamic range, allow us to have a final that's louder as well. I do quite a lot of clipping, I've heard, and it's kind of using that clip to zero strategy, where the idea is like small amounts of clipping throughout the track, reducing the dynamic range in small points. That way, when you run through your mastering chain at the end, your limiters are not having to go so crazy because there's small amounts of limiting and compression and clipping happening throughout the track. But I think that's another video. So once I had the bass and the vocal sounding good, then it was all about just kind of adding in extra flourishes. So at this point, the reference track really just has the bass vocals and drums. So at this point, I wanted to add some additional elements. So I have this additional vocal here. Just a part of it that I clipped out from the track to add as like an additional little kind of like background layer. I added this like Nectar 3 plugin, and my buddy John Alpine, shout out to John, showed me you like attach the LFO to the formant of this plugin, and it kind of slowly kind of like changes the pitch in a really cool way. Bunch of weird shit here. If you want to jump in, it's kind of really similar to what I had on the previous vocal chain. The only difference that I did add is this shaper box with this weird sweeping sound, and maybe you could kind of hear that like bit crushing sound that comes in every once in a while. So let's have a listen to it. And right there. Is that sounds in context? And then the next thing I added, which is also the vocal was from one of my old songs, and then I also found this cool bit of like synth stabs. So let's have a listen to that. Kind of like a Rhodes sound over here. That's definitely not in the track at all, but I want to kind of try to fill it out a bit more on my end. So I added that in. In terms of any processing, just removing some lows. This is all kind of standard stuff for removing some of the sustain. Actually, I don't know if I mentioned this. This is the free kilohertz transient shaper. Again, I've just mapped some of the core knobs to an Ableton rack, removing some sustain to kind of tighten it up so it doesn't sustain as long. And I'm just finding tighter sounds is definitely like kind of the way to go. So having something like this is really useful. Use it a lot on drums, but can also use it on other elements as well. A little bit of sidechain, so it's pumping, saturation, so it's filling out the sound. Width, so it's pushing out to the left and right. And then once again, I threw on the sick compressor with the magic setting on like the synths. Because, yeah, a lot of these elements that I was adding from this old song, they were like overly dynamic. They got like way too quiet. So I was able to use this nice compressor to kind of make that more consistent so I could bring it up nicely. Other than that, let's just quickly rip through. Because all this isn't really in the original track. I added this house string. It's gotta play here. So I just added this in the kind of like the breakdown leading into the last here, the break going into the last drop. This is like a classic house kind of sound. So what I did is, yeah, and you can grab this too in the project files if you want. But I created this little thing called house string. It's just this like house string sound. And I set up the loop point so like it plays here. And then once it gets into this loop marker, it just goes back and forth with like a crossfading loop. That way it can be an infinite house string. It doesn't kind of like decay. If this was just played as a sample, you can see here play and then fades out. With this like little functionality, I can have the MIDI playing for the whole like a minute or like 3 minutes, go through the whole song. And since it's doing this little crossfading looping thing, it's infinite, which is really cool. Makes it more flexible and usable in your tracks. And then a little bit of processing, removing some lows, some sidechain so it's pumping, saturation so it's filling out the sound, and width so it's pushing to the left, right, making it more stereo. And then the last thing that I want to kind of go over before quickly going into the arrangement actually is the effects. So I noticed there was, I think this might be a cool, it's something I'm experimenting with more. Adding in like effects, as especially like white noise effects, as a way to kind of increase energy and fill out the sound a little bit. So if we listen to it here. And let me turn it off now. And let me turn it on. So I feel like it's actually really cool. I think I heard it quite a bit in the reference track as well. But here it is soloed. So just like a white noise downlifter. I've normally been doing these going into a section. But I kind of heard this a lot in this one and the Chris Lorenzo California Dreamin' track. And it seems like a sick way to like fill up the sound a little bit. So I basically just added that in a different bunch of spots here. Into the break. And something I thought that was interesting is like I added in like this huge riser going into the drop. So that's like a normal arrangement trick. I've done a bunch of videos on that. But what I did do also is I added in when the drop came in too. So the drop hits and it also has that riser sound. So I'm going to show you what that sounds like. I thought it was kind of an interesting little trick. You're listening to this. And then there's more when that impact hits. There's something I like to call micro transitions. The macro transitions are the larger ones that happens every 32, 16 bars, larger changes in the track. And these micro transitions are small things that happen every 8, 16 bars, create more energy and interest and stuff happening. So like reverse crashes, laser sounds, these like white noise sounds, all that kind of stuff. Especially make a loopy house song sound a lot more interesting and dynamic. Other than that, quickly want to show you the arrangement. So in this project file, I have two. This one over here on the right is the actual arrangement for the track, the Revolution track. And then over here on the left is the changes that I made so that it would adapt to my own song. Something I like to talk about a lot in these videos is like using the reference track as a starting point and also as a mixing guide to make sure your stuff's sounding like solid throughout the way. But then you're going to want to start making creative decisions in terms of like the notes that are being played and the sounds that are being added and the arrangement, so you actually have your own original unique song. There's basically just a drum intro, sub where there's like the vocal isn't really in, but then the vocal slowly being filtered in. Then we have the drop where the vocal's full, 32 bars of that, and then we have the first break. Just removing the kick, a bunch of like kind of like washed out sounds and all that kind of stuff. It dropped in energy a bit more. I added in 909, and then it goes into the full drop again. This goes over, I think, 64 bars, and then there's a small break. And then the build down, which is very similar to the sub. So it's like, this is a good point where the DJ can like mix in, and this is a good point where the DJ can mix out. Basically just building it, adding in your track here as the reference track, and then having these dummy tracks here make it so easy so that when you build up the track vertically and you kind of make a full sounding awesome loop, then you're just kind of copying things over and adjusting, flicking back between the reference track to see what elements they've added or taken away, looking at your arrangement track, like, okay, this is there's just a sub, okay, there's a drop coming in. It really helps you quickly guide your decisions and get an arrangement that sounds polished and sounds awesome because you're referencing against a polished and awesome song. So that's kind of the idea there. So let's jump into the 80-20 rule for all this so we can wrap it up and give you a good understanding of what you can do to apply the key ideas into your own productions. Before we do that, I want to mention that this video is sponsored by our good friends over at Rocket Powered Sound. They hooked up the kick samples that you're hearing in this, so we went over the kick portion and the drum portion. Having a solid sounding kick is super important. Having solid sounding drums is really important. It's part of their ultimate sample pack, which includes over 1,000 iconic and usable sound. And you can get it for 30% off by using the code that's on screen now and the link that's on the screen now, or there's also in the description as well. So yeah, shout out to them for hooking the community like this. Really appreciate it. And with that said, let's jump into the 80-20 rule for this one.
Hi, my friend. Matt from Best Friends Club here. And if you've been paying attention, then you've probably figured out what the 80-20 rule is when it comes to creating melodic elements like synths and vocals for your music. The goal here is to get 80% of the result with only 20% of the time, energy, or effort. And because the first key to the 80-20 rule when building out your melodic elements is to use a reference track, we are making sure that we're effortlessly hitting 80% of a very professional benchmark. In particular, we use that reference track to focus on playing in the right key, following a similar rhythm, and selecting the right sounds. This just keeps things fast and focused. The second key is to mix as you go in an extremely streamlined way by only focusing on the volume of our sounds compared to the reference track, as well as using a simple repeatable channel strip for each track that we add to our songs. The third and final key is that you don't want to reinvent the wheel each and every time, so you should start a practice of repurposing your old project files by adding old project files, racks, and groups to your collections area in Ableton. By creating a suite of powerful templates, Ableton racks, and one knob effects that you've personalized and curated over time, you'll be able to get a higher quality result faster. If you'd like to get a head start by downloading all the racks, templates, and all the files that you've seen me use in the Ableton project file for this video, or if you'd just like to take a closer look at any of the techniques or tracks you saw me work on in this video at your own pace, you can find a link to this video's project files on screen now and at the second link that's in the YouTube description. I'm recreating a different song from the Beatport top charts every single week and making the project files available to anyone who wants them. You'll also get access to a private Discord where you can ask me and the community questions, as well as share tracks for feedback. If you or your music are not quite ready for a shot in the arm like that, I've also made you a completely free bundle of templates, samples, and special bonuses that have helped me figure out how to completely finish one new song each and every single week. And you can grab that free Ultimate Song Finishing Toolkit by visiting the first link that's in the YouTube description here. However, if you just feel like staying on YouTube for now, that's totally fine. Save that link for later and check out this playlist of videos where I remake other melodic elements like synths and vocals from other songs in the Beatport top charts. Or if you want to take what you've learned in this video to the next level, check out this video right here.